Welcome to We're Human. Now, I've taken a bit of a hiatus with this in order to come back with something a little bit different. Yes, we're still focusing on leadership, kinda, but at the same time, there's much bigger topics, much bigger things going on in the world that will affect the world of leadership, but at the same time are going to be things that we have opportunities from, maybe some threats from, maybe some worries about, maybe some fears of. So I've decided to start and kick off talking to someone who I think is a bit of an expert in this, certainly a lot more expert than I am, but also has focused his business entirely now on focusing on helping organizations and individuals, businesses, business owners to use AI in a really healthy, thoughtful, considerate, ethical way. Now, we've all got different opinions on AI. So the whole series is going to be about that: AI and legal things, AI and patent and intellectual property, AI and neuroscience, AI and anything you can think of, HR, but with a fundamental focus on how might future leaders of their own organizations or in bigger corporate organizations leverage this technology to the best effect. That's the target. We may end up with more questions than we started with, and that's okay. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce someone who you may be familiar with already. So Chris Williams, who I met, we haven't met in person ever, have we? So
not yet.
3 years ago online, and I reached out for some help with LinkedIn. And that's the focus, wasn't it? LinkedIn was kind of the focus there. And I have two questions to get us kicking off with. A, tell us a bit about yourself for those of you that don't, anyone that's been living under a rock and doesn't know who you are. Also, what's drawn you to AI from the world of kind of LinkedIn marketing and that?
Well, firstly, thank you for the introduction and for inviting me on. It's always nice to be recognised for something that you're passionate about. So thank you for that. So how did I get to where I am? As you mentioned, my focus was very much on marketing and around using the LinkedIn platform. As that business was sort of going at a nice trajectory, AI started sniffing around, and we were as a company was very early adapters to AI and utilizing AI to
you adapt and
create
adopt,
content,
right?
and that sort of stuff, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it transpired that they appeared to be more of an interest into AI as a tool than LinkedIn as a marketing tool. And being a bit of a geek, I decided to sort of go headlong, if you like, into the world of AI and learn more about it with the forethought of this is going to be fantastic for my marketing business. It transpires that it was fantastic to create a business from it. So we still do an element of marketing, but our focus is very much on helping companies leverage different AI tools, understand AI, understand the risks and mitigations and all that sort of stuff, the legal justifications of why you can and can't use certain products. That's where we sort of shoehorned ourselves into. And that's where we are, and we have been for over a year now.
Yeah, God, no, that's brilliant. And think about it, it was probably, I'm going to assume this now, you and I are old enough to remember the kind of onset of the internet being a thing. I've been very excited about that, very, engaged with it. And oh my God, this is amazing. I just remember watching like Hamster Dance and stuff like that. And I still, and there was this salad fingers thing that was around and just, and it would take
Wow.
ages to
Yeah.
download. Yeah, that's how old I am. Ages to download. And you get that horrible noise when you're on like 512 kilobyte downloads and uploads, and everything was like and the fax noise, that fax noise when you first. So we've moved on from that, we've embraced it. Most people who were really anti-internet at the time are very much, they're out there, they're even in, they're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, they're online, they're on, oh, like my parents. Oh, where you gone? Is that Lenny? He's got to go out. They're on Facebook like my parents. They've embraced the internet. So to get really down to brass knuckles, just for anyone that's a little bit nervous or not sure on what AI means, if we just start off with what is AI in terms of its really kind of grassroots, but also what is AI now, and then maybe we can explore a bit of what we kind of perceive could be coming, how that could evolve. We can't predict, but we can take an educated guess, I guess.
So AI isn't a new concept. Artificial intelligence has been being spouted and talked about and worked on since the late 80s. Depending on different technologies, you could even argue from the early 70s. So there's always been this idea of artificial intelligence or the mechanisms behind it. I asked ChatGPT what AI was, because that's ultimately is going to
So
give
what are
you the
you?
actual answer. And it says artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are designed to think and act like humans. These intelligent machines are capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as recognizing speech, making decisions, solving problems, and understanding natural language. So that's what
That's not bad.
AI says it is.
Okay.
A lot of what society believes AI is there's a disconnect.
Mm.
So the amount of companies and people that I go and talk to, and I'll discuss AI, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we know about that," and they'll give an example of how they know about it. 9 times out of 10, their example involves not artificial intelligence but automation.
Ah,
And there's
yeah.
a key distinct thing. Automation isn't a machine thinking for us. That's the artificial intelligence bit. So there is a slight misunderstanding, I think, across the board when it comes to exactly what artificial intelligence is. Now, we've got artificial intelligence around us 24/7, where decisions are being made regarding our gas supply and our electricity supply and things like that based on artificial decision making,
Mm.
and things to do with our banking systems and our financial systems are all manipulated to a degree, if you like, and used through artificial intelligence. Where we, as people, and on the everyday, the normal run of the mill, your businesses, your lawyers, your accountants, we are more in depth, more sort of connected to automation
Mm.
patterns rather than artificial intelligence patterns. So, things like if you use project software,
Right,
a
yeah.
lot of project software, that's got nothing to do with artificial intelligence, unless there's, some of the new ones that are being built now. It's all to do with how things are automated. So you do this, this happens. You answer this question, this happens. So artificial intelligence isn't as widespread as some people are saying it is, because there's this misunderstanding that artificial intelligence and automation are one of the same thing when they're not. They're very
Yeah, and I
different.
suppose again, I guess I haven't always made that distinction. I'd have to fess up to that. But also, there's probably more AI around that we have sort of got used to than we kind of recognize, like chatbots, for example. I mean, I was
Yeah.
chatting on one the other day. It was Lathwaite, so yes, I like wine. And I was on there, and it popped up. Can I help you? And their chatbot is called Vinny. Now, I hadn't put wine Vin together at that point in time. I was
Yeah.
moments where you just don't see it. Just you have a face palm in it. And I was chatting away to Vinny without realizing that Vinny was a chatbot. And then Vinny suddenly said, "Let me put you through to one of my human counterparts. I think they could help you better." And I'm like, "Holy shit, you're not a human." That was just
Yeah.
so. It was a very, very well created, well programmed, well set up to understand. Because I wasn't typing in like I would type if I thought I was talking to an AI, where I might be more professional or blunt. I was typing like I was making jokes, with this, and it wasn't coming back with like really weird answers to my jokes. If I look back at it now, it's like, well, yeah, okay, that might be a bit clunky, but I just thought it was a human that maybe English wasn't their first language or something. So yeah, and Clippy.
That's
Clippy
yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
Microsoft Word from back in the day. And again, we're showing our age at that point, but
yeah,
it would always see you're doing this. Maybe you'd like to try this tool.
yeah. Well,
Is that
Clippy
automation or is
wasn't.
that, yeah?
Clippy, the first iterations of Clippy is nothing to do with artificial intelligence. It's to do with recognizing pattern and attributing a result to a pattern.
Right. Okay. So a little
So
bit more like automation than, yeah.
yeah. So if you put in bold at the top of a thing, it can make the assumption that this might be a title. Let's give them some advice regarding how
Oh,
to
yeah.
create
Yeah.
titles.
All right.
So it's very much almost you do, and there's an action created because of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Chatbots traditionally are built on that same technology. It's an automation route rather than an artificial intelligence route. They're taught not through an algorithm, but through plain code, that if a user uses this keyword, this is the answer you provide.
But
And that's where the hatred of chatbots came about,
Yeah.
because you could tell very, very quickly this was just a textual loop
Mm.
that if I didn't get my answer correctly, I'd then try and go, actually, no, I'm gonna say something different this time. And you just ended up going in this spiral where you never got your query answered, your opinion of chatbots dropped, and then you thought all AI was rubbish. Well, that chatbots originally weren't AI. They're not designed to make decisions based on your answers. They're designed to respond to cause and effect, to very, very black and
Mm.
white. The chatbot you're talking about there clearly has been adapted for human behavior to
Mm.
mimic human interaction. We've got a chatbot for a company that I'm working with at the moment, and it matches the tone of the conversation that comes into it, which
Okay.
is I think is a phenomenal tool. So, for example, we had a conversation with and I've got to be careful what I say here. A conversation with somebody that was wanting to ask a query about the business, and that person used different emojis in their
Okay.
text, like text speak. The chatbot replied in the exact same tone. So
Wow.
it used the little smiley emoji, it used the thumbs up and all that sort of
Mm.
stuff. So the user actually felt, I've met my level.
Yeah.
And you can
And
tell looking at the log that the conversation went really, really well.
mm.
And I doubt at any point did that user feel like they were interacting with a bot.
Yeah.
Now, personally, that is not the purpose of a chatbot. It's not to replace a human being. It's to tee up the conversation or the direction of the conversation to go to the sales team, to go to the marketing team,
A
to go
triage,
to
like yeah,
that
like
sort
a
of thing.
triage. Yeah.
Like triage. And that when it's used like that and when it's explained to a user like that,
Mm.
I think the user becomes a little bit more susceptible to having a good conversation with it.
Yeah.
It's no longer I'm talking to something that I'm going to get frustrated about. I'm talking to something that's actually helping me on my journey.
Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? It's kind of making that you feel more comfortable to because like I say, later it's never actually hid the fact that Vinny was a bot. I think even if it says it, have a chat with our chat bot, they should call it our chat bot. And in my head I engaged with it because I thought well, it might work. But so I guess it's how we I'm kind of going into ethics, isn't it? Is how ethical is it to fool somebody into thinking they're talking to a human versus actually, do you want to talk to our bot? They've probably got the answer. In
Yeah.
which case, yeah, okay, do you know what? If it gives me a quick answer, then I'm more than happy to do that rather than being passed off, particularly if it goes off to a contact center somewhere with a lot of background noise or, where it's going miles and miles away. And not that I have a problem with overseas contact centers, but quite often, and certainly I help my parents a lot with this, they can't understand the person they're talking to because A, they're a bit deaf. My parents not the person they're talking to. And
Yeah.
also they struggle with heavy accents. And that's
Yeah.
really difficult, isn't it? So actually, for them, the chatbot's really useful because they
Mm-hmm.
get a very clear, readable answer. And then my dad's getting quite deaf
Yeah.
now. Sorry, Dad, if you're watching, but it's true.
Yeah.
And it makes it much clearer. So I think there's a place, isn't there, for it?
And that's the
Sense.
one thing that I always say when it comes to the implementation, and that's the very much the topic that I focus on is the practical implementation
Yeah.
of AI within businesses. So it's all very well and good going, oh yeah, we've embraced AI, we're doing it here and there and there. But how does the user, the person with his bum on the seat, how do they physically use that AI tool for an improvement to their business life, to improve efficiencies and that sort of thing? And I've always said is AI, it's not there to replace a specific person. When you start looking at and I've had businesses come to me and ask, we're looking to reduce our headcount. Can we use AI to do that? And that's a very valid route, I guess, if you are looking to look at your overheads and reduce and headcount, things like that. But AI can't, at this stage, in my opinion, can't replace a human being because it can't embrace the empathy. It can't embrace the things, the decision making based on priority. Now, somebody may argue with me, say, well, Teslas have been managing to do that with their autonomous cars for ages. They can work out whether crashing into this tree or
Save the
running
little old
this
lady
person over is
versus,
the right
yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
But we're talking about whether a person can choose whether this invoice should go out to that person at this date or not, or whether they give leniency because if someone can't afford to pay this, it's not black and white. Humans need to be part of a decision making when a decision making isn't black and white.
Yeah.
But that idea of an AI feature such as a chatbot replacing your customer service. No, it shouldn't. It can be a tool to assist it. It may even be a tool to reduce the amount of people you need in that department, but it shouldn't replace it.
Mm. That's it. And it's making the quality better, I guess, isn't it? And like I say, someone like my need at the time was, I thought I needed a quick answer. If the bot could have given me a quick answer, brilliant, done. All right, fine. Actually, I did need to speak to a person. It was a bit more complex than that. Something was going wrong and the bot couldn't help. So it was great because, again, I got through, I have to say, the customer service is fantastic. Everyone you speak to is very knowledgeable. And you know, there is, for me, there's a little bit of an ethical thing around, like you say, is are we replacing people with this? But if it streamlines their roles, then yes, of course, it's going to help a company's bottom line. I'm not going to go into what that means for the world of work going forwards. That's going to be another episode, I'm sure, because there's a lot of legs in that, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's almost having those protocols in to say, actually, when there needs to be an empathetic, ethical decision to be made. At the moment, it's not one to farm out to the chatbot or the AI. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, should it ever be? Could that be the one thing we humans keep for ourselves and don't outsource as part of, managing this and using AI in a intelligent, ethical, considered way, making our jobs easier in some ways, possibly harder in others, because the things then we are dealing with are the empathetic, difficult stuff, which needs a human touch. Which
you've got. It's not necessarily just an ethical debate, so to speak, but you've got, if we sort of roll back the years a bit to IBM Watson. So Watson, 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was introduced as a healthcare assistant, and it made some very bad mistakes, sort of national headline mistakes.
That's also where I heard of it, and because
So it hit the news, and there was
bad calls.
Without going into details, there was decisions made about people's lives that was being made by a bot, so to speak, or an algorithm, and it didn't get them right. Now, what came from that was not necessarily the limitations of the AI at the time, but it came the very realistic probability or problem of who's responsible when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
When a human makes a mistake, ultimately the buck lies with the human, the business, that sort of stuff. But when a bot makes that mistake, who's at fault?
Yeah, where does that accountability lie? Yeah,
exactly, that accountability. Now, if a business is found to be short of something, and they end up having to pay a big fine, and maybe even someone goes to jail for corporate manslaughter or whatever it may be, there's accountability, and the business learns from that. If we've got an algorithm that makes its decisions based on whether it's got something right or wrong, and then learns from those in the future, it's learning, but it's not being accountable. Now, human society demands that someone is accountable for the bad things. We have to do it as part of our own sort of, I don't know, the way of dealing with stuff. We have to have somebody that's accountable. If you are, unrightly or unjustly accused or done something, then it's the worst thing a human can feel. That is feeling that you've done something wrong with no purpose or no ability to sort of defend yourself. We have written within our laws the right to defend ourselves, but AI, we don't have anything like that. Now, the very real risk is corporate responsibility is done away with, because no, it's an algorithm that's done it. It's not us.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good point.
Then you've got a whole different topic of conversation.
It is. It kind of brings us back. It does kind of loop this back to leadership, doesn't it? What is the leadership account? Because we know, if you are a CEO of a large organization, say a construction company, something like that, and somebody on one of your sites dies, and that it can happen. Construction is a very dangerous industry, and it comes out that there's been some negligence somewhere, or there's a protocol that hasn't been applied, or there's something missing, or you've cut some corners in terms of saving costs, that kind of thing. Ultimately, the accountability lies with that CEO. They're the ones that could go to jail. They're the ones with the big fines. Yes, the organization may pay the fines, but they do the time, right? And that's quite you sometimes think, is that really fair if somebody on site's made an error? But actually, if it's about a systemic error that's part of your decision tree, you at the top are responsible. I guess it's yeah, will there be, we hope there might be some sort of link through to, if corporates are using AI, that actually those at the top of the tree that are programming or buying or setting up the briefing of this thing to do the thing it's doing on their behalf are still accountable.
If we bring this to something a little bit more tangible and
Sure.
less
No,
detrimental in terms of murder or death, but we've got something which is a very real issue within the world of AI, and that's bias.
Mm.
Regardless of how well these algorithms learn, whoever programmed them originally delivers bias with it. So they're not necessarily totally 100% bias free. Now, to put that into context, in New York State, there's a local law, Law 144, that stipulates that nobody is allowed to be hired without a human interaction with the decision-making process. So this prevents somebody being rejected on basis of just an algorithm.
Yeah.
Now, I've got splinters in my backside on whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, because recruitment, and we'll just focus on recruitment for a second. Recruitment for years has had to deal with an issue of cutting the wheat from the chaff. Of, refusing somebody's application because of certain reasons, didn't match the job description,
don't have the skills,
their longevity for the business isn't right, or whatever it might be. They've always towed that line of whether they're ethically right or wrong to turn somebody down.
Yeah.
Now, AI's come along with this onus of, we can do away with all of that, so we can work out straight away on a CV parsing process that 97% of these CVs, they're not appropriate, get rid of them.
Okay.
The person who has written that algorithm has bias built into it. If it's a male, if it's a female, if it's an Afro-Caribbean, if it's a Chinese, whatever it might be, there will be societal biases attributed to that person that is now within that coding.
Yeah.
Now, that's what the laws are saying. And they're saying that to protect that means that, and this is the ironic bit for me, that another human has to be part of that decision-making process, not just the bot, because of this uncontrolled bias.
And yet we have that already in the UK, don't we?
Yeah, so the irony bit being, we're pushing it back to a human who has more bias than what this technology does.
That's what and I think, I've my background is HR, so I've used sort of candidate management systems where applications are made online, and ideally it means you're not then sending a CV and then retyping everything on your CV into the system. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The ones that do really annoy me. But it does mean that, if you have set parameters for a job, i.e. you must have a driving license, you must have this, you must have these qualifications, years of experience, that's dubious ground because that can imply age, but 1 year's experience is fair, because most people can get 1 year's experience regardless of their age. So you can keep it kind of clean at that point. And quite often that, for us here, is a very clean way of filtering out the CVs that are clearly not appropriate. It's a delivery driver role, or a field-based nursing role in rural Somerset somewhere, and it comes with a car because you're driving to patients' houses and da. If somebody says no to the driving license question, easy out. So I mean, with the New York law, would the human still have to come along and go, yeah, that's right, and just kind of, well, that sounds crazy. That's not cutting the workflow, is it? And yet you can have those unbiased things as long as they are those unbiased things, as in it's a factual thing. You've either got it or you don't have it. That's it. There's no middle ground. There's no, I've got a provisional. No, that's still a no.
My understanding of the law, and I'm talking from a very, very far away view over in the UK rather than the States, that this was something that was introduced because they didn't know how to deal with the question.
Yeah.
I.e., I've been rejected from a job by one of your algorithm's biased. And because it is practically impossible to deny or agree with that statement, something's had to go in place.
There has to be an
investigation. That's where the legislators have brought this bill. Yeah.
And I suppose that's the difference with the States, is that it's because they can bring legal action for any reason whatsoever, no matter how spurious.
Yeah,
there is a bit of arse covering to be done at that level.
massively.
I kind of get it, but at the same time, it seems like, this is using a piece of pry bar to scratch
The way I've
your
sort of,
face, right?
and I've done I've had I've given quite a few talks to groups of HR people, HR directors, and
Mm.
I gave one recently in Birmingham, to a group of HR senior leaders. And the questions, the questions that I get from all not just HR people, that are all based on, what if the program, what if AI gets it wrong?
Yeah.
So it's the risk mitigation. Now, my argument to that is, we shouldn't be asking that question. We should be asking, what if we interpret something wrong? Because ultimately, it's my responsibility what I post.
Yeah.
It's not the accuracy of what the AI bot is that generates. It's not their fault if they get it wrong. They give you the terms and conditions to say that some of the information might not be accurate.
Yeah,
But
for
if I
sure.
decide to copy and paste and post it, I'm the one that's done it.
Yeah.
So we can't use AI as a get out of jail free card. Oh, that's wrong. Sorry. Yeah, AI did it for me. No,
Yeah.
you're still responsible as the human being.
You own, and I guess that comes back to IP, doesn't it? It's your information that you are posting under your name, that you are sharing, or that you're
Yeah.
creating into a webinar for your teams, or the speech that you're making as an HRD or a CEO. It's your stuff, right? You've
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, my understanding from things like ChatGPT, and I know you and I have had that. I came onto one of your little program things. It was a really short thing, wasn't it, over lunchtime once, and got so much from it around. Okay, so it's like it's making a cake, isn't it? So the ingredients you put in, the stuff you feed in one end,
Yeah.
drastically impacts the quality of the stuff you get out the other end. And
Massively. Yeah.
asking the right questions and giving it the right information, and what kind of was the aha moment for me was telling it and understanding it. It could understand when I said, I'm a 40-something-year-old coach, close to 50, who is doing XYZ, and needs to create X, can you write me a framework for this, and then add in that, and at the end of that saying, okay, can you make it a little bit shorter, can you make it a bit longer, can you make the sound, actually it tried too hard to be too cool, which was hilarious. It was like, hey
Yeah.
guys and gals. I was just like, yeah, I never say that, so
Yeah. Too
rein the
far.
cool in.
Too far.
Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
can you rein the cool in a bit and make it slightly, like, you can be a bit more formal.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I put both articles out. Well, one that I wrote myself without any AI intervention whatsoever, and one that was purely written by ChatGPT on the subject of leadership and humor, because that's one of the drums I'm beating, is that it isn't taught. It isn't talked about. No leadership course talks about the appropriate use of humor as part of this humanizing of you as a leader. And yet it's so freaking valuable, but that's a whole other soapbox. But these two articles came out saying pretty much the same thing. And yet were very, very different. And people looked at it and went, yeah, okay, that one's you, Rach, and that one's clearly but actually they're both pretty credible.
Yeah.
So that was an eye-opener for me, was the quality of what you're putting in. And yes, I had to read it all through. And there's a couple of things in it I don't 100% agree with, because it's a little bit,
Yeah.
somebody takes that literally, they could get
Yeah.
themselves into trouble being funny at work, because that's not always healthy. But yeah, it was,
It's
I mean,
one of those.
yeah.
Yeah. So my take on the use. So again, the practical use. You've got artist. Let's talk about the marketing world. That's where
Hmm.
a lot of
Yeah, no,
AI
that sounds
stuff
cool.
is used, or a lot of the tools like ChatGPT. So you're using ChatGPT and you're saying, I want it to create a blog. Now you can ask it to create a blog and it will do it on that command.
Hmm.
You don't even have to give it a title, and it will do something. The more you tell it, the more it will write. If you treat a GPT or any language model as somebody you're instructing in your team to write something,
Yeah.
then you'll get the most out of it. So if if you've ever had a conversation with a copywriter, they've got the skills, the English, the grammar, and all that sort of stuff. So they know how to construct a nice blog. If they're an SEO skilled copywriter, they know how to weave the keywords in and that sort of stuff. But you still have to go back and say, right, this is what the blog I want it to be about. It needs to be about 700 words. We need to focus on these 5 keywords. Really want readers to sort of go through to the call to action. So there's got to be like a crescendo towards the end. You give that instruction. So why are we not giving that instruction to a GPT?
Mm, yeah.
So treat your GPT as just as if it's your copywriter that you would have to instruct. Now, I got a conversation that I had via a chatbot. It interacted back to me because the conversation went on for a while, and they were asking the question, what's the purpose of utilizing ChatGPT when we need to put in so much information? I.e., I'm not saving any time. I'm just changing the words I have to use rather than write it myself. I'm now writing almost the same amount, but for a command, for a prompt. And the idea being is you probably only have to do that once. If you're
Mm.
using it within a chat or you built a custom GPT, it will start to learn and know about you. So
Yeah.
you can, the next time you go to that chat window, is not create a new one, say, right, the blog you did last week was fantastic. We need to do another one now, but using these keywords. And it's going to remember the style, the tone, the cadence, all that information that you've already given it. The second time we're using it, we're now starting to save more time. And
Mm.
what I would say is get whatever you're wanting to produce, get it to be between 80 and 85% complete.
Yeah.
If you get it to that level, take it out and then do the rest yourself.
Mm.
Now, if that project normally takes you an hour, yeah, you're getting it to 85%. That's taking 85% of your time out of that thing. So rather than doing it an hour, it's now taking you 12 minutes, something daft like that. Use those 12 minutes to now do the actual work that you need to do. Do the titivating, the changing.
Mm.
If there's an Americanism or a phrase in there that doesn't quite sit right, make the changes. Don't get caught up on the idea that for me to save time, I need it to do the whole job all in one go. This is
Yeah,
a
'cause you are
tool to
saving the
aid.
time, aren't you? I mean, the actual creation, once you've put that stuff in, is really quick. It's a couple of minutes. It's
Yeah,
not
massively.
poring over it for however long. And yes, the
Yeah.
editing can take a bit of time depending on how much you want to think about it or dwell on it. And there's a whole other conversation about when we overthink and all that kind of stuff. But that's a human thing anyway. That's
Well,
us.
that ties nicely into the next point. Is we've got this idea that everything that we create in the business world, it has to be perfect.
I know.
Whereas everybody that's reading the stuff doesn't actually give a rat's ass whether it's perfect or not. Does it get the message across? Does it make them feel positive or negative or whatever the feeling you want to? Does it give them a call to action?
Yeah. What does it mean to
They're the
me?
only real three things that a piece of content, if we're producing content, needs to do. It's the same with producing an email. It doesn't have to be a perfect email. It has
Yeah.
to make sure it covers what we need to cover. We don't need war and peace, and we need to make sure that the call to action is actionable.
But the same thing with
So,
I mean, take this up to, a CEO or a director of a team making a speech or a
yeah,
presentation to a team. Again, they will pour over it and over it. It has to be perfect, it has to be perfect, it has to be perfect. And like you say,
yeah,
the people they're delivering it to won't give a shit if it's perfect. They'll give a shit if it lands poorly because it's tone deaf. They'll give us stuff if
yes,
it's something that is going to be impactful to them in a negative way. But actually,
yeah,
they'll give more of a stuff or a shit if they just don't understand the message.
yeah.
So actually, is it clear? Is it understandable? Does it make the point? And have you thought about how you want them to feel as a result? And if it's a yes to those four things, then crack on. Crack on.
Sorry,
You
B
okay? You
just
got the
buzzed me then.
B.
Yeah,
It's that
random
time of
B.
year, they're all
Hey,
coming out now. I had a bumbler in the conservatory the other day. It was
um,
amazing. Huge fat bumblebee. Anyway, carry on.
it's one of those from going back from the LinkedIn days when people were saying about how you write content and that sort of stuff, and people would always question whether a piece of content did well or not
Mm.
based on how many interactions or that sort of thing, and then they get really not or annoyed that the post they did on Monday did really well, then the post on Tuesday did crap, but I did exactly the same and it was the same sort of content. It's not down to the writer who gets the right to say whether something is good or bad.
Oh, it's the audience, right?
It's the audience. So if you're chasing perfection in your eyes of what perfection is, it's going to miss 99% of the people out there because they don't agree with what your perception of perfection is.
Exactly, exactly. And this is the thing, it's you've only got to capture that 1 or 2% that are genuinely the people you need to capture. And even then, they might be the I don't want to call them lurkers, that's a horrible word, but the observers, those that sit in the background and just watch and eventually will contact you. And it feels like it's out of the blue, even
Yeah,
though they've probably been following you for quite some time. And
yeah, yeah,
those are the ones you want. They're like Schrodinger's clients. They're both there and not there consecutively. At the
yeah,
same time, they exist and they don't exist. But I think, yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing around content, isn't there? I posted a picture of a bush that was in Madeira that we noticed it looked a bit phallic, which I giggled at really inappropriately in a garden full of old people. And you put a picture like that up, 98 comments straight away. You're just like, whoa, I haven't had that many comments in years. Yet you pour over something that's like, oh, this is really deep, this is really meaningful, someone's really going to like this. Yes, somebody really did like it, one or two, and that's okay. But it's getting your head around that, isn't it? Is where does it add the value? One was a bit of a giggle, and let's face it, 98 comments means we all need a bit of a giggle, and everyone appreciated it. But not everyone needs to think about when they're on autopilot and saying yes to things automatically, all that kind of stuff. Now, I did ask ChatGPT for a list of questions for this, and I haven't used half of them or any of them really, but I was impressed actually at what it came up with, and they are written in a very sensible, pragmatic way. Things like, can you provide an overview of your background experience in the field of AI? Now, I wouldn't use those words because again, I didn't tell it not to be formal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hey, Chris, how did you come to AI? That's where we're at, right?
How I came to AI was 100% by accident.
Yeah.
So
right?
and well, most of that, and this was like 2.5 years ago. We got to a level where I was having to make a decision: do we hire somebody else, or because we'd reached the maximum? Because we back then we worked basically for the hours. So we would allocate hours for the content being created and that sort of stuff. And we'd reached the threshold of the three of us within the business. So it was a decision: do we either up our prices to go that way? Do we hire somebody? Which then, if you look at the progression, whenever you hire somebody, you have a little blip and then it goes back up, and then, or do we look at other ways of being a little bit more efficient? And this was when ChatGPT 3 first came out. First was a public thing, or it was 2.5, I think it was back then. It first came out, and there was talking about the automation of content. And it was a news feed that I saw. I think it might have been on TikTok or something like that. And I was sat on the toilet as people do, have a quick flick through that, to pass the time.
Well, there's nothing else to do in there.
Made me straight. Well, that's where I am now. No, and it's there's a long standing joke that people think I'm in a toilet when I'm with this backdrop. I'm not.
It's a bit
I'm in where the toilet used to be before it was converted, but there we go. That's why it's a little window. But this idea of being able to create content quickly was sort of being bandied about, and that got me thinking. Well, actually, if we use something that could do that, if we could create 30% more content in the time that we've got, then we can grow our business by 30%, which was the next 4-year plan. So straight away, I'm thinking, oh, really good idea. So that's when we started looking at utilizing GPT, and it wasn't for about another 4 months till we actually got using it, and then started actually using it for clients.
Yeah.
And pretty much overnight, we were able to, and it wasn't just like a 30%. We could reduce the time. So for every hour, we managed to get back about 35-40 minutes.
Yeah, amazing.
Just because of it. And what we did, rather than having us all do the same sort of job, there was one that would create the ideas using AI, put the framework. So the other person would then titivate, make them look good. The other person would then do the artwork, and then they would go out the door. So we changed how we worked as a team. We changed how much we could do, which enabled us to charge a lot more, or not necessarily charge more, but to take more clients on.
Yeah.
At the same time of that happening, this idea of getting more clients was a great idea, but I couldn't find any. We got a few, but not many. So we didn't grow at the rate. So we then were in a position where actually we've been so busy for a long period of time, and now we're doing more, but we're not having to do as much to get more. So it was, well, actually, we can make more efficiencies at this point. And that was when one of the decision was made that one of our staff was going to leave. So we went down to 2. And that wasn't the reason for it. There was other reasons behind it, but so we went down to 2, which then got us to that same level again. And then I had an epiphany moment that there's lots of people utilizing AI and charging the same amount, and dare say ripping people off from what they were being off before. So we did a 50% price cut across the board. So every single client got 50% off. That's it. From then on in. And we managed to gain a few more clients because we were now.
I was going to say they must be. There's that when word gets out around that, it's like that's much more affordable, and where maybe I was shying away from it before, suddenly I'm in, that kind of thing. But also that word of mouth piece, I'm guessing, was quite a big thing for you guys.
So that and we milked it a little bit. We put, out of all the social media companies out there at the moment, we're the only one giving 50% off what we used to charge because we're admitting we're utilizing AI to help our services.
Yeah.
And lots of other social media agencies still to this day deny that they use AI.
Yeah.
And
Must be.
yeah,
It must be. But that's the thing.
there
I
you go.
think
So
actually
which
one
is
of one of the big selling points from when I first came upon you, and obviously it was a slightly different. Obviously, you were as yourself on LinkedIn, and then
yeah,
there's a whole story about that we won't go into today, and I'm sure that's a story you'll tell at some point. And it became Len AI, and you're still interacting, but obviously through a slightly different method,
yeah.
given that all the drama that goes on with LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But you were always very brutally honest about stuff. And I think that was what was so refreshing because organizations don't tend to be. A lot of them are, oh, we can't possibly tell our clients that. And why not? Why not? And then, like you say, if you've got fair pricing in relation to what you're doing and you're open about that, folk are going to gravitate towards that, aren't they? Because they kind of know what they're getting. It's like what you see is what you get. It's the Ronseal way of doing stuff, right?
Very much so. And that was almost the seal in the coffin for that business. Not the decision to cut the prices, but this idea that it didn't sit right that we was doing something that everybody else could do themselves very, very easily,
Mm,
just with a bit of guidance.
yeah.
So one by one, we started getting rid of our clients and sort of saying, look, you don't need to hire people to do this. Let me show you how to do it. And that transition, which was about a 3 to 4 month process, that transition sort of sealed the Make a Different Noise business and created Len AI
Yeah.
because now we were actually showing people how to use AI effectively and without the need of paying four, five, £600 a month to have your content created. And they were getting so much more from the use of AI as well. So that it naturally fell into the Len AI, so to speak. And we've not looked back, and we've got involved with bigger projects the further we go on. Whereas now, we only as an individual we'll do custom GPTs, but they're sort of few and far between. Our main bread and butter is large consultancies now.
Yeah. No, I like that. So conscious on time, and I did say to you at the start, I don't want to become like Stephen Bartlett length on this. I don't think I've got the luxury of doing that because it's not that well
Not as
known.
good looking as him, I'm afraid.
No, well, but you know what? No, right. But ultimately, what would you say to anyone that's really nervous about engaging with AI, using AI in their business? So, say I'm guessing my audience is going to be much more in the kind of small to medium business owner kind of space and a business leader kind of space. So SME business leader thinking about, oh, we could use AI more in our organization. Now it's going to be obviously how long's a piece of string, what type of organization. What would you say would be the first thing for them to consider that they may be shying away from, that they may haven't considered, or the questions they should be asking of themselves before they embark on engaging with this?
This what and I literally I've just done a presentation for a company I'm seeing on Monday covering this exact thing. It's a company in a particular industry that hasn't embraced AI fully, and they want to be seen as a market leader. And they're having a big roundtable discussion with all their key stakeholders and everything. And I'm invited to come do a presentation. Now, part of that presentation is to explain where to start, i.e., what should you be looking at? And the first thing for me is understanding what you currently do is more important. It's the biggest step that you need to do. Now, for example, I used to work for a recruitment firm. You won't be able to find out who it is, so I can talk about this one freely. Those people that know me will know exactly who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to mention names. So this recruitment firm had a financial system, and this is when I used to be part of their data team and their software team. And this financial system didn't talk to any other system. Now, what used to happen was every 2 years or so, they would do what they call a big tech roundup, and they'd work out, right, for the next 2 years, these are the tech projects we're going to look at.
Mm.
And every 2 years, the same tech project came on, we're going to look at the financial system. And 6 months later, they always got to the same point of we can't really do anything with the financial system because it's a little bit too fragmented. We don't really know whether it connects to here and there. It's a bit of a big job, so we're not sure if we can create efficiencies. That to me is the biggest problem that business will ever face, is they don't understand their internal processes properly.
A big
So they're
distrust in
never
their
ever
own
going to be able
systems.
to. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was so fragmented, and this financial department connected to several different other systems. There was a holiday working out system, there was a timesheet system, and they all wrote their own systems. Now, the one person that knew how it all worked was overworked and overstressed and underpaid, and knew he was getting double time every time there was an issue. So he was happy to be overworked and underpaid
Ah,
because he got
okay.
the extra. So it was never something that the business could realistically, unless they was, an agency came in from outside, could sit down and go, right, this is all the processes that this piece of software does.
Mm.
Once you understand the processes that your business does, you can then start to attribute timestamps to those parts of the business, i.e., you've got an invoicing department that works with the finance department, and all the invoices that get sent out, they're linked to that sort of thing. And what happens is the invoicing department, they have to send these emails out all manually. So straight away there, something that's done manually, that is a repeatable effect. That to me is a key area to explore. To right, can we automate or can we create anything that artificial intelligence in that area?
Yeah.
So first and foremost is understand what you do as a business. Even if you're a one-man band all the way up to 3, 4, 5,000 staff, understand what you do on the granular level, the people with the bums on the seats, what they do
Mm.
day to day.
And what you do and how
Second
you do,
thing,
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Is
and how
what are
you do
you
it. Yeah,
doing? How are you doing
yeah,
this? How much time does it take? What steps does it require?
yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a
And
bit
that
of
and that because once you understand that this department spends and attribute it back, look at that department, say that this finance department, there's 30 staff, that's this amount of hours, and out of this amount of hours, 10% of those hours are done sending emails that are repeatable.
mm,
So straight away, well, there's 10% of our time we could potentially look to save
yeah.
because there's this one task that all of these people are doing. Right. Well, how can we automate? How can we add artificial intelligence? So it's understanding what and where you are as a business and what you do. Then it's about having somebody like me come in or another consultant that can actually look at those timestamps, look at all of that process mapping and go, I think you can do this, this, and this, or these are the things. So at that point you'll have somebody like me coming in and saying, actually, well, introducing Copilot, one of the Microsoft tools, which is going to aid in your automation for your emails and your writing letters or what it may be. That's probably going to save everybody 15 minutes a week. Well, 15 minutes a week doesn't sound a lot, but if you've got
No, when you add
3,000
it up,
staff,
yeah,
humongous. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's about looking at that and then looking at what that cost analysis is. If it's going to cost this amount, but we're going to save this amount of time, effort, money, whatever it might be, now it's worth doing it. So if
yeah,
it's not, you've at least explored it and gone, you know what, we'll come back and look at that in a year's time. There's no technology that's at the right price for us to give us the right benefit.
mm,
Following those sort of 3 steps, you in 6 months to a year's time, once you've implemented these changes, you've now got something that you can build on or just learn from and go, you know what, that wasn't the right thing, or it was the
yeah,
right thing.
yeah. Or
But it's
scale it up or scale it back, or keep it as it is.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
But there's no point you get into that point of introducing individual chat GPTs or utilizing data analytics or something like that. There's no point in doing that if you can't measure its success. And that is a huge thing that I see with a lot of particularly smaller businesses, smaller like 1 and 2 man bands. They will pay, £500. I'll build somebody a custom GPT for £500. They've not done the cost analysis to work out whether that £500 is going to be beneficial. How many years is it going to take to get me that £500 back? A good GPT if you're using this is just for a record, if you're using it to generate content for social media and for the business in terms of newsletters, that sort of stuff, then you'll get that £500 back within about 2.5 months.
yeah,
So it's not a massive cost to have a custom GPT at that level. Now, if you're not using it for those purposes, you're spending money to get something with your name on it and you get nothing from it because you're not using it.
mm.
So again, it's then we've discovered what we need, we've got the stuff for what we need, and it's now been implemented. Now we've got to use it.
Yeah. It's one thing to
There's
have
a
it,
lot of
using it.
there's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
sure.
there's a lot of companies that we go to, and I'll do an analysis. I'll sit there and I'll spend 2 days in their business, and I'll walk away with a process map of what they do, a rough one because they haven't got one themselves. And then I'll give them, a 4 or 5 page report. Sometimes I do 10, 15, depending on how much there are, of the things that they could introduce, the time saving, the cost analysis, the benefit of it, the training required for the staff. And it's all packaged over to them, and they'll go and do that and go, fantastic. We're not going to do it just yet. We're going to wait to see what happens with AI for the next 6 months. And I'm sat there just banging my head against the wall, going, in 6 months it'll be totally different technology then. But
Well, yeah, exactly. This is it. I mean, that's going back to what we're saying. AI. When I said to you, "What is AI now?"
yes,
And if we don't leverage what we have now, are we then relearning something? Learning something entirely new, or having to relearn it when it's something different in a year's time, when ChatGPT 8 is suddenly the thing that we're all using.
If you look at what, so a lot of people have spoke that the that AI is as revolutionary as the internet, and I would argue it's 100 times more.
I'm going to say, would it be more? I mean, the internet was fine, but it's like
more. My analysis, if you like, or my comparison is, this is the same as the Industrial Revolution. The whole of society changed, not overnight, but I mean, how people worked, how people earned a wage, how things were manufactured, how things would travel up and down the country. The whole country, the whole world changed when the industrialization occurred. That is this moment that we've got with AI in terms of the capabilities. Just little things like applying an algorithm to detect breast cancer.
Yeah.
And you think, how the hell does that happen? Well, if you can attribute an algorithm which can pick up on a pixel within an X-ray, that's color coordinated with all those areas that that a doctor should see, but you can't see with the naked eye.
Yeah.
And you can't see till it's formed over a period of time. We'll attribute that with a colorization of a pixel. Pixels we can't see with our eyes; they're too small. But if an algorithm can detect, actually this pixel here is the same color pixel as these other 3,000 positive breast cancer screens that we've got, all of a sudden these images are now being shown to doctors 6 months before a cancer has been detected. That is phenomenal.
Right.
That's a piece of software that is helping us detect somebody's illness before we've been able to physically manage it before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that I'm really conscious on time here, but I love that actually, if that's how we're closing this one, I love that we're closing on that sort of story. Because I think one of the big learnings for me has been, is when you first hear about this stuff 2-3 years ago, I instantly thought Skynet, of course, because a lot of us go to that. The Hollywood has a lot to answer for in fears that we hold about this kind of stuff, and I've got to say it's not a healthy thing to kind of focus on. We are entertained by things that are post-apocalyptic, and I don't ever want to live through that. I don't want to see that future. That is not escapism for me. That's crap. I don't want that to happen. That looks awful. Is it giving us any lessons to how to avoid it? Probably not. But ultimately, it's something to be wary of. But what's really lovely is that lesson to stay open-minded and curious and interested and watchful, so that you are not instantly going, oh, it's computers taking over the world. It's more, how do we as humans interact with this new technology, with this evolving technology, given that it is what we have created and we can feed it, we can give it, and yes, okay, we can give it our biases as well as our positive. How do we interact with that? And for the moment, I'm reassured that I can choose how I interact with it, how much I use it, how much I feed it biases or not feed it biases. But again, that all comes back to me as a self-aware human. And again, we're going to need other humans to maintain that, aren't we? ChatGPT doesn't coach us yet. It's not our therapist. It's not, I know there are some automated sort of versions of that, but at the moment it isn't. And I'm not going to go there today. That's another. But I'm happy now where it is. I'm conscious that there is some things that we need to just keep an eye on and make sure that we are thinking ethically when we're engaging with it, when we're using it. We're not manipulating people with it, and we're not pretending that we're not using it. Let's be honest with each other. And I mean, would that be your And the last takeaway for folks, or is there something you think, do you know what, there's one little nugget I'm going to chuck out there for everyone that's listening?
I think there's the argument for whether it's positive or negative is not necessarily down to the technology we should be questioning. It's the brain behind the technology.
Yeah.
Who if this was around in Hitler's day,
Oh,
then
yeah.
the worst could ever happen. We would have probably be facing that. Whereas we're at a time where the people people will argue with me with this, that the people who are dealing with AI at the very top are aware of the potential pitfalls and are very much, if and I'm focusing particularly on ChatGPT now, but the guy who set that up, he wanted this to be a public facing thing that everybody could take the benefit of, could understand and learn, because the more we know about it, the less chances are we are of falling foul of it. Now that does come with a risk, is that amongst us in society, there are those people that are less than desirable when it comes to the future of mankind and perhaps shouldn't be in the gene pool. But we are
You
not
got him when
God
the
or
lifeguard wasn't
whoever the higher
looking.
being is. We can't make that decision.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we as a society have to hold ourselves to account on how we use AI. We can't hold other people to account.
Yeah.
We can through courts, but ultimately it's down to how we interact and act accordingly. And
Our
if we
choices.
decide to use it to manipulate, to create deep fakes, to try and con people's nans, then let's hope the world of fate deals with that person. The rest of us that are seeing it as a positive tool, then we've got to embrace it as a positive tool,
Yeah, and
and,
remembering
and
that
use
for
it as
every one of
such.
those, there's going to be someone who is countering that with their own way of
Yeah.
doing it. I mean, if you look at Martin Lewis, where he's been
Yes.
calling out those that have been using his face to
Yeah.
promote stuff that he would not put his name to. So I do not advertise things. Anyone that follows him knows he doesn't advertise anything. So if they suddenly see him
Yeah.
advertising, you're instantly going, that ain't him. But not everybody will know that.
No.
But he's calling them out. He's using his platform, and again, in a healthy way, to call them out and hopefully bring some ramification. I think there has been some court cases, haven't there, on that front. So he has managed to get some justice on that front, and that's
Sorry,
cool.
that's my door, as you can probably hear my
Oh,
dog.
is it? Well, I think we're kind of getting to a conclusion here. I mean, if you have time, just to give us a really quick summary of how can actually, if people want to get in touch with you, if people want to work with Len AI, because let's give you the plug, because I did promise that, and I do want it to be something that is reciprocal as well. This will benefit me and where I'm standing in some way. I haven't worked out how yet, but it's a passion project. But at the same time, I want my guests to have that opportunity to just give out your website, give out your contact details, and say, hey, come and have a chat about AI with me, because I think I can help you. I'm sure you can help.
I will. Throughout that whole thing, my dog was going absolutely
Was
ballistic
he?
because the
Couldn't hear him.
postman's at the
I know
door.
you
That's all
muted
right.
yourself, but yeah.
It's not a problem. So I muted just then. So yeah, Len AI, LEN space AI, or all one word if you go on the website, lenai.co.uk. The company is named after Len, who you just heard, right on cue.
Beagle.
My focus, as I mentioned previously, is very much on the practical application, helping people use AI tools, not just give you a consultancy and say this is what you should do, but actually sit down and get that working within your thing. Custom GPTs and chatbots seem to be all the rage at the moment. So anything to do with you or your staff utilizing chatbots or utilizing a custom GPT, then let's have a chat. There's no obligation for you to do anything, but you'll be better prepared with decision making.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. It's been fascinating. And I think it's such an important conversation that we keep having, not necessarily you and I, but in general, that we keep thinking about this. And obviously, it's going to be slightly different for different industries and episodes coming up. I do have some folks lined up from the legal world, from the patent and intellectual property world, which is going to be really interesting about how it stands with IP. Not sure it's been defined yet, but we'll see where that comes from. The creative world, we mentioned copywriters today. Is every copywriter in the world going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what about my job? And let's find out actually how might it help them versus threaten them. And I would imagine the savvy ones are recognizing how it helps rather than threatens, I would hope.
The good copywriters are using
Exactly,
Not yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a lady from whose background is actually working in the likes of Hollywood and stuff like that. She's just come back. I think she did one of the speeches at the after party for the Golden Globes or something. So that's going to be fascinating. Or in how it's impacting screenwriters. I mean, they've been on strike a few times, right? Is that going to be an impact for them? And so loads of stuff that's coming up for industry, for leadership, for the world around what AI means in a variety of different things. Chris, if you have any ideas going forward that, hey, you should really speak to so and so, then I would love to hear it. And anyone listening, you think you want to be on this and talk to me about AI and how it impacts your world from a leadership perspective, from an industry perspective, then drop me a line. All my details will be in the show notes. Thank you, Chris, for coming along. This has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Yeah, and hope to see you again soon.